Sacred Space, the podcast, has been recorded on Gubby Gubby country. Myself and guests acknowledge and pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Sacred Space, the podcast. I am Tanika, your host, and this is a space for you to tune in and become educated, evolved, and expanded on all things generational healing, personal development, and spirituality. This is a space where I'll get beautiful, like-minded guests on to speak into their stories and their wisdom, as well as hearing mine. So take a big, deep breath into your belly, get anchored, get grounded, and let's get into this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for this episode today because I'm just going to be talking about understanding your inner seasons and how much this actually impacts understanding yourself and getting so much done and just feeling so connected to yourself, right? So we're going to get into the inner seasons of the menstrual cycle, and I've had some episodes about this before in the past, although I want to just bring it up again and I just want to speak into it again because I just feel like it's so important, and I would not be able to be studying full-time, be it entrepreneur, running my own business, maintain a social life, maintain healthy relationships in my life if I didn't understand my menstrual cycle. So that's what we're really going to be talking about. But before we get into it, I have an oracle card for the week. So it's Woodwives adaptability, which I just think is so, of course, it's adaptability, right? Because that's what understanding the menstrual cycle is. It's adapting and really bringing in that adaptability. So I'm going to read this out for everyone. It's number 64, if that means anything to you. So we got: the Woodwives dance into your dreams as a reminder to be grounded no matter what life offers you. You need to know who you are, what you'll tolerate, what you've learned to date, and what boundaries to set so you feel good about yourself. Life is going to offer you something extraordinary now, and in order to learn and receive its blessing, you must remember that being grounded gives you more freedom, not less. You have everything you need. You have all it takes to do this right now. If you also keep reminding yourself to be flexible, you will be amazed by how well things play out for you. The Woodwives are both wisdom keepers and students of the new world, as these forest spirits have an uncanny ability to adapt to changing circumstances and always find perfect way to grow and expand. They represent what you already know how to do. Learn, be in a beginner's mind, let go of your rigid notions of how things should be, and be present to what is right now, unencumbered by your projections. Is there a storm brewing because things need to change? No worries, nothing can uproot you now. It will pass, and you will dance with nature and move with it all. Perhaps you're being given an opportunity to take a chance on something new. You're not sure how far you can go without losing your footing. Have no fear, for when you remember your roots, your integrity, your authentic self, you can stretch yourself beyond the invisible line you drew. Go for it, and you'll be so glad that you did. How beautiful is that card? And I really resonate with the part where it's the imaginary line that you've actually placed there for yourself, the invisible line where you're not allowing yourself to go past that. It's almost like the concept of the glass ceiling. And I feel like when you don't understand your menstrual cycle, and I know I always loop everything back to this, but I promise it's because it's actually what makes so much freaking sense. When you don't understand your menstrual cycle, you actually have a shorter distance that you can go before you hit that glass ceiling or that invisible line and you can't go any further. So that's why I really want to speak into the inner seasons, and just so you can get an understanding of what does that even mean? What even are inner seasons? What is she talking about? So our menstrual cycle has 4 different phases. We have the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. These 4 phases are what we go through in the 28-day cycle on average, of course. Remember, we're not carbon copies of each other. We each have different lengths of cycles. So about 23-ish, 24-ish days to about 35 days is probably what you could say is an average, sorry, not average, a healthy cycle. If it's any less or any more, we kind of want to look into that, right? And your own cycle. So just remembering that. But we have these 4 phases that we journey through. Now, when we look at the earth and the way the earth works, she also has 4 phases. It's winter. Oh my gosh. Winter, spring, summer, and autumn, right? So these 4 phases that the earth moves through, of course, like for different phases of the year, whatever. We go through this in our internal world, and it's really represented in the way our hormones rise and fall. It's really represented in our moods, in what each phase almost like incorporates, if that makes sense. So when we look at our bleed time, which is our menstruation phase, I wish my microphone, you probably can't hear it because like my microphone blocks out background noise really well, but there is just like really beautiful birds just sitting at the door, like literally singing to me. And I'm like, it's just so beautiful to hear them, but you probably can't hear it in the microphone. So I'm just getting sidetracked. Anyway, our menstruation phase is linked to like inner winter. So like think about this time, right? And it's like a time of just going inward, just like you do in the winter time. And then the follicular phase, which is the phase just after your bleed time, is the phase of the inner spring because we're starting to come out of our shell a little bit and like, the flowers are starting to bloom. Then we move to inner summer, which is ovulation, ovulation energy. Ovulation energy is just like very out there, outward expressive, just like in summer, like we want to be out there and be seen. And then we have the luteal phase, which is the final half of our menstrual cycle. And this is the inner autumn because the leaves are falling away. We're starting to turn inward again. It's starting to cool off again. Right now, here in Australia, we have just hit autumn at the start of March, so a couple of days ago. And already the air is starting to cool off. Already it's starting to feel just like very, just like want to go like in my own energy so much. Like, I don't know, this is just me. I don't know if I'm just like being super dramatic with the weather change, but like it's definitely not as hot. Like haven't had the aircon on for a few days. We love that. The power bill loves that. But that's very much like the energy of autumn. It's like, oh, it's starting to cool off. Like maybe I want to sleep in a little bit more because like the sun's not coming up as early. And that's really like the same as the luteal phase, right? Like you're just starting to like energy levels are starting to drop. So that is the four inner seasons. But why is that important to know? Because as women living in a world where everything is very much by the sun rather than by the moon, and when I say that, I mean we're on this 24-hour cycle, right? We're working the 9 to 5, we're busy, we're doing all these things. Like there's so much going on. Our days don't necessarily look like at this phase of our cycle, we're just doing this. And then at this phase of our cycle, we can do more. It doesn't really look like that. That's not how society's been built. And although there's becoming more leniency in like the supportiveness of the menstrual cycle, as women, we still don't really have that. So like it's about building your lifestyle outside of the uncontrollable things like your work and things like that to actually support yourself in these phases. So when you understand your inner seasons and you know what season you're in, you can actually begin to like set up your life accordingly to your hormones, to what energy you're in. So the first step to this though is actually tracking your cycle. And now with an app can make it really like easy and like it reminds you and all the things, but something I just want to bring to your awareness is when you actually just track like written your own notes, you're not going to be going off an app is telling me I should be feeling this way, so that's how I'm feeling. You're going to be creating more of an intimate connection with your inner seasons. So the first step I would say is actually tracking your cycle written. I have a free downloadable cycle tracker that I'm going to leave below. I actually have 2 cycle trackers now, depending on what style you like. So I'll leave them linked below for you. If not, they're just over on my website, sacredspace.tanikalace.com. Go check it out if I forget to leave it below, but I'm sure I'll remember. So the first step is that, and then it's building from there. So of course, like I said, if you're working a 9 to 5, you can't necessarily like stop working a 9 to 5 when you're on your in a winter and you're in your bleed time and your energy is really low. But how can you begin to work with this phase and actually harness that you are very intuitive in this phase, actually harness that you're actually in an energy to really be inward and really listen to your inner voice. So it might look like during that week, if you don't already, like doing a meditation of the morning so you can really connect in with your energy and really like cleanse your energy to move forward into your day without picking up on everyone else's shit and actually just understanding what feels good for you and like what your intuition is communicating with you. So when we track our cycle and when we begin to see what inner season we're in, we can also see like how our body shows up in that season. And there's shadows to each season as well. I have another episode on that. Go back and listen if you haven't already. I think it's just called like Shadows of the Menstrual Cycle. And that's a really cool episode for you to understand that there is the duality in each phase. So although we are supposed to be feeling like inward and all the things in one phase. If you're feeling opposite, it could just be that there's like some healing to do with that archetype. So all of that probably sounds confusing if you're like, haven't listened to that episode, definitely go and listen to that. And I feel like that will really support you. But it's really about like understanding your inner seasons and being able to live accordingly to your energy levels the best that you can. And like, it's also not about using your period as an excuse. And that's why I think it's really cool to just understand the seasons. So if this is something that you're really wanting to understand, is like your inner seasons, the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, and you might want to understand them for various different reasons. Maybe it's because you want to optimize your lifestyle and like feel like you aren't limited by your cycle. Maybe it's that you, just like I said at the start, like you could be a full-time student, you could be running your own business, whatever it may be. Like, understanding your cycle allows it to be stress-free, seamless experience. And I'm not meaning like completely stress-free, like of course, if you have exams coming up and all the things, like you're going to get a little overwhelmed, but knowing your cycle, you can study or like set up your business structure accordingly to support these more yin phases and the phases where like your brain is like a bit more foggy and things like that. So I would invite you to jump inside Inner Seasons, the masterclass. It is a masterclass that I have ran. It's pre-recorded, so once you purchase it, you have access to it. It also comes with an ebook with like journal prompts and a little bit further information. This masterclass, it's like a 40-minute masterclass, and I deep dive into each inner season. I deep dive into the hormones, into how to eat with, how to live in alignment with each phase. And I think it's a really cool first step if you're just dipping your toes into this world of understanding your cycle to feel better about yourself, and to feel more connected to yourself. Personally, I think this is stuff that should be getting taught in schools, and it's really like such a part of my mission to just make sure so many more women are so deeply educated on their cycle. So jumping on over to Inner Seasons, the masterclass, it's $22, which is like just like amazing for like how much change it can actually create in your life. And that is why I think that understanding your inner seasons is so, so important. So hopefully this episode has supported you to just at least understand like what even are inner seasons, like what is she freaking going on about? It is the 4 seasons related to the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. When we bring them together, it allows it to be like really digestible, really easy for you to understand. And it's really easy to remember as well, right? Because you've got something to relate it to. So hopefully this episode supported you. I will be back in your ears next Thursday at 4:44 a.m. because I've changed my upload time, just because why not? But have a beautiful rest of your day, night, whatever it is, and I shall speak to you next week. Hi, beautiful. Thank you so much for being a part of my podcast community. I have so much gratitude for you, and I would love to hear what you think about this podcast. Leave me a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or share this episode with a close friend that needs to hear it. If you leave me a review and send me the screenshot on Instagram at Sacred Space W Tanika Lace, I will forward you access to a free guided womb healing breathwork journey and a 15% off code to purchase any masterclasses or courses available on my website. All you have to do is leave me a review, send me the screenshot on Instagram at Sacred Space W Tanika Lace, and I'll forward you access to the free guided womb journey and a 15% off code. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week.